We continue now at the top of Daf Ayin Dalet Amud Aleph in Mesechet Kesuvos. This is Kesuvos Daf 74a. The Brisa continues Mishum Rabbi Eliezer Amru. In the name of Rabbi Eliezer, they said that in this case as well, Choletzes v'lo mesyavemes. She can do chalitza, but she cannot do yibam. Let's say her husband dies. Rashi over here says, Mishum Rabbi Eliezer Amru Choletzes v'lo mesyavemes af b'shechazira k'shi gadola palag. Rabbi Eliezer happens to say, let's say he divorces her and then remarries her when she's an adult. So you would think certainly it's a doraisa marriage. Certainly there should be yibam. V'af megarish gadola v'echzir. Rabbi Eliezer actually goes so far as to say even if he divorces her when she's an adult and then remarries her, in all of those cases, Rabbi Eliezer says there's no yibum, and the reason is v'taime. His reason is mishum degazer ba mishum yisoma b'chayav. It's just a gezerah because let's say you would have a situation where it would be a derabanan marriage. Let's say she's a yisoma b'chayav, meaning to say, let's say her father marries her off, and that's a doraisa marriage while she is a katana, while she is a minor, but then she gets divorced. The divorce is doraisa, but then she remarries. It's only derabanan. So in that case, of course, there's only going to be chalitza if her husband dies because the marriage was only midrabanan. So Rabbi Eliezer therefore says in all similar cases, even in situations where it might be a doraisa marriage, but if it's a similar situation, there's going to be chalitza and not yibum. But in any case, the Gemara continues its question, but over here in this brisa, the case is very similar to a situation where he made a mistake and it's just dealing with one wife. As Rashi over here says, if he marries her when she's a katana, again, the case over here is he divorced her, but then he married her as a minor, the god la'etzla, and then she becomes an adult. The tos isha achas, he meaning tos kiddushay katana. The mistake over here only is that it's a mistake that it was a kiddushin while she was a katana. And yet, what do we see? Upligi, we see that they argue, as Rashi over here says, Upligi, the Amri Rabbanan, Mesyavemes, the Rabbanan seem to say that it's a doraisa marriage when she becomes an adult and there is yibum. Alma, so what do we see from there? We see Kiboal Mishagadla, that when he has relations with her when she's an adult, L'Shem Kiddushin Baal. So we understand that to be L'Shem Kiddushin for the sake of the Kiddushin. It seems to be that would be the same thing would be true. The Gemara thinks the same thing would be true. Let's say there was a mistake by Nadarim, and then he had relations with her again. In other words, he married her, and it was a situation where he thought she had no Nadarim upon her, but then he had relations with her. Apparently, the Rabbanan would say that it would be considered a Deoraisa Kiddushin, and that would be a question against Rabbah. Rabbah said in this situation, certainly, it's not going to be a Kiddushin because there was a Tanai over here. There was a condition that she should not have any Nadarim upon her. And the Gemara answers, Hasam Namin over there also, B'hakam Iflagi. There's a specific machlokes over there by a katana. It's different than our situation when you're talking about Nedarim. Mar Savar, because one holds Adam Yodeya She'in Kiddushay Katana Klum, that a person knows that the Kiddushin of a katana is nothing, and therefore it is obvious V'gamro Ba L'Shem Kiddushin. Obviously, when he has the relations with her when she's an adult, it's L'Shem Kiddushin. Umar Savar, and the other one holds Ein Adam Yodeya She'in Kiddushay Katana Klum. A person does not realize that the Kiddushin of the katana is nothing. V'chi Kabal Adaita the Kiddushin Harishonim Kabal, and when they're having relations, so he does it thinking that the first Kiddushin was good, and therefore, again, it is not relevant to our particular case. And now Rashi over here points out, Hachi Garcinan, Rashi has a different text, Hasam Hainu Taima, that over there the reason of the Rabbanan, according to Rashi, we're not explaining Rabbi Eliezer, we're just explaining the Rabbanan. Adam Yodea Shen Kiddushay Katana Klum, a person realizes the Kiddushin by the Katana is nothing. Aval Kitchal Tanai Uboal Daitei Tanai. But again, if let's say there was a Kiddushin on some kind of a condition, let's say a condition she had no Nedarim, and then he has relations with her, so he still does have in mind the Tanai, and therefore the Kiddushin will not be good. Below Rashi says you should not have the girsa like we had, that this is what they're arguing about, because as Rashi already said, Rabbi Eliezer would say his halacha all the time, even in a situation where he divorced her as an adult, that if he remarries her, she cannot do yibam, has nothing to do with katana. The time alav mishum kiddushay tos, so it has nothing to do with kiddushay tos. Again, as we said, it was just a gezerah because of the case of Yesoma b'chaye ho'av. And Rashi does say, Uman de garisla, but according to the one who does have this text in the Gemara, Mefarish Dahai Mishum Rabbi Eliezer Amar de Braisa Achzira Kashikatana V'Godla Etzlahu. He'll have to say that Rabbi Eliezer is only going on the case when he remarried her as a katana and she became an adult. The Polig V'Lesli Latana de Braisa Aliba de Rabbi Eliezer Hadatana de Masisim de Yavamas. According to that, the Tana of the Braisa will disagree with what the Tana of the Mishnah in Yavamas said in Rabbi Eliezer. The Amar de Megarish Gedola V'Achzira Nami Asa Rabbi Eliezer, because over there in Yavamas it says even if this all happened when she was an adult, Rabbi Eliezer would say Aser. So according to to this, if you did have this girsa, you'd have to say that the Bryce and the Mishnah are arguing with one another. And the Gemara continues, Itmar Nami was taught as well, Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Amar Rav Yochanan, Rav Acha bar Yaakov says, Rav Yochanan says, HaMekadesh al Tanayu Ba, let's say a person does the Kiddushin with a condition, then he has relations, Divrei HaKol, Eino Tzricha Heimenu Get, just like Rabbah said, everybody would agree she does not require a get in that situation because the marriage is certainly not going to be good because the condition will still be in effect. And the Gemara continues, Eisvei Rav Acha b'rei Ravika bar Achse, Rav Acha b'rei Ravika, who was the son of the sister of Rav Acha bar Yaakov, he asked on Rav Acha bar Yaakov the following question. The Brisa says, Chalitza mutas ksheira, if you have a chalitza that was mistaken, it's still going to be valid. And the Gemara says, Ezui chalitza mutas. What does it mean you have a chalitza that was mistaken? Amrei Shlokish says, Kol she'omer lo, chalotz lo v'kachata konsa. Let's say they tell the man, if you do chalitza with her, so then through the chalitza you'll be able to marry her. Meaning exactly the opposite of what the chalitza does. The chalitza actually releases the woman, and instead he does it by mistake, thinking that it's going to marry her. So in that case, according to Reish Lakish, the Bryce is saying that the chalitza is valid. So the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Ani Shona, I have learned, I have taught, Bein sheneskaven hu v'lo neskaven. He, when you have a chalitza, whether he's having the right intention and she's not, Bein sheneskaven he v'lo neskaven hu, or let's say she's having the right intention and he is not, in both of those cases, chalitzasa psula, that is going to be an invalid chalitza, ad sheyiskavnu shneim. You have to have both having the right intention, the right kavana. And so Rabbi Yochanan says to Reish Lakish, V'at amrit chalitzasa k'sheira, and yet you're saying that it's a valid chalitza when the person doesn't even know what the chalitza is doing. He thinks that the chalitza is marrying her. And so therefore, Elam Rabbi Yochanan, rather Rabbi Yochanan says, the pshat in the Brisa is as follows. Kol she'omer lo chalotz lo, al menashe titan loch masayim zuz. Let's say they say to him, do the chalitza, on the condition that she gives you 200 zuz, and then she doesn't actually fulfill the condition, still the chalitza is going to be ksheira, it's still going to be valid. Alman, so what do we see from this Brisa, says the Gemara? Kevan da'avid ma'isa chulei achle l'tanoi. Since he actually did the action of chalitza, we say that he's forgiven the condition is going to be irrelevant, and we should apply the same thing over here, says Rav Acha b'rei Ravika. Hachanami over here also. Cave on the ball, since there was an act of relations, the condition is going to be considered forgiven, it's going to be irrelevant, and therefore that's a question on Rav Acha bar Yaakov, who says no. Rav Acha bar Yaakov says that the condition is in fact relevant, and we say in the situation, according to him, that it's not going to be a good kiddushin. And so the Gemara says, Amar Lei, so Rav Acha bar Yaakov said to him, Barbe Rav, student of the academy, Shaper Ko'amrit, are you really asking a good question over here from the case of the Chalitza? Michdi, let us see. Kol Tanai Mehecha Gamrinan. Where do we learn the whole concept of making a condition? Mitanai b'nei Gad u'b'nei Ruvain. We learn it from the conditions that were made by the Shevet Gad and Shevet Ruvain. This is when they were going in to fight in the land of Eretz Yisrael. They were going to inherit their land if they went in properly and helped the rest of the Bnei Yisrael settle the land. And we understand all the rules of Tanaim from that Tanai that is found in the Torah. But therefore, if we're going to model Tanai based on the Tanai b'nei Gad and b'nei Ruvain, so if you have a Tanai that in theory you could send a Shliach to fulfill the Tanai, so that already is going to be have it Tanoi. There it's going to be a good Tanai. But to lo efshel l'kiyum al yedei shliach. But if you try to make a condition in a situation by something which you cannot do through a shliach, and chalitza, the Gemara is assuming, is something you cannot do through a shliach because you have to actually remove the shoe from the yavam. You can't remove the shoe, let's say, from somebody else. So kihasam, like over there, lo have it tanoi. So therefore, the condition is not going to be a good condition. In other words, what he's saying is you can't ask a question for chalitza because by chalitza, of course, the tanai is irrelevant. You can't make a tanai by chalitza because it's not something that can be done through a shliach. But that's not the same by our case when we're talking about kiddushin. Kiddushin is something that can be done through a shliach, and therefore, since kiddushin can be done through a shliach, so the tanai is in fact going to be relevant. But the Gemara says, 1 second, but what about the act of relations? It's possible to do a kiddushin through an act of relations. That everyone agrees you can't have a shliach do the act of relations for you to do the kiddushin, so that's not possible. Kiyasam, like over there. But yet we're saying it is a good condition. That's the whole point. We're saying that when the kiddushin was done with a condition and then there was an act of bia, we're saying over there that the condition is relevant. And so to that, the Gemara says, no, Hasam over there, Misham de'izkish havayos lahadadi. That's simply because all the different kinds of Kiddushin are compared to one another. Since it's possible to have a Shliach to give the money for Kiddushin, therefore we say that in general Kiddushin is something which can have conditions, and therefore the conditions are going to be relevant, or can be done through a Shliach rather. Since it's possible for someone else to give the money of Kiddushin, it's something that can be done through a Shliach. Therefore, again, in general, Keddushins can be done through a Shliach. Therefore, conditions are relevant as well. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Ula bar Abba, Amar Ula, Amar Rav Elazar. Rav Ula bar Abba says that Ula says, that Rav Elazar says, HaMekadesh b'milva u'boal al tanai, u'boal b'pachos mishava pruta, u'boal divrei hakol tzricha himenu get. Let's say you have a situation, a person is number one, he's Mekadesh, let's say, with a loan, and then there's an act of relations. Or let's say he's Mekadesh with a condition, and then there's an act of relations. Or let's say he's Mekadesh with less than a shava pruta, and then there's an act of relations. Divrei hakol, everybody agrees in all of these cases, tzricha himenu get, it is considered a good marriage, and she's going to require a get. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Yosef bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Menachem, Amar Rav Ami. Rav Yosef bar Abba says that Rav Menachem says that Rav Ami says, HaMekadesh b'pachos mishava pruta. Again, somebody's Mekadesh with less than a shava pruta, ubal, and then there's an act of relations, tzricha himenu get. So again, the halacha is she requires a get. And Rashi over here explains, b'milva, again, the first case was, let's say a person is Mekadesh with a milva, with a loan, shemachal lo milva shechayeves lo. Let's say she was chayev to him alone, and then he was mochalet, and he wants that to be the Kesef of Kiddushin. We say in Kiddushin, that's not a good Kiddushin. You have to actually give over money. You can't just forgive a loan. Because when she borrowed the money, she can spend it. Over Rishus HaKaim, it's already in her Rishus. Forgiving a loan is not considered to be giving anything to her. Tzricha himenu get, so she requires a get. And the point over here is, even if she led him astray when it came to the condition, because of the meaning to say she didn't actually fulfill the condition, because again, like we said earlier, a person is not going to, since there was an act of relations following this, therefore that's not assumed to be a bilas nos, it's assumed to be an act of relations for the purpose of Kiddushin. But then we saw that Rabbi Ami, so Rashi explains, Rabbi Ami poligad Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Ami over here, he says the same halacha only by the case of Mekadesh b'pachos mishava pruta. He says in that case, if there was an act of relations, it's a good marriage. V'yamar HaMekadesh b'pachos mishava pruta ubal hu detzricha get. Only in a case of Mekadesh b'pachos mishava pruta with an act of relations is a get required. Aval Mekadesh b'milva u'al tanai ubal. But let's say it's a loan, or let's say there's a condition that wasn't fulfilled and there's an act of relations. Einot tzricha himenu get. According to Rabbi Ami, she does not require a get because it's not considered a good Kiddushin. And as the Gemara will explain, my time, and what's the reason? Bahohu de lo toy liyo savar shepachos mishava pruta yu Kiddushin hilkach gamru ba l'shem Kiddushin. When it comes to less than a shava pruta specifically in that situation, there we say that it wasn't really a mistake. The person understands that pachos mishava pruta is not going to be a Kiddushin, and therefore the act of relations, in fact, was the real Kiddushin. As the Gemara over here explains, bahahu de lo toy, in this particular case, a Mekadesh v'pachos mishava pruta, he's not going to make a mistake. Aval b'hanach toy, but in the other cases, he is making a mistake. As Rashi over here says, Aval b'hanach toy kesavari odasi shein ola nadarim. He thinks that she knows there are no nadarim upon her. L'kachi nisus, that's why she's getting married. According to Rabbi Ami, the act of bia is really done on the understanding of the original Kiddushin, which was no good, so it's not a good Kiddushin. And also b'milva, when it comes to a loan as well, lava kol b'kiyan b'hilchas Kiddushin. Not everybody understands the laws of Kiddushin. He thinks the milva really was effective when it was not. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Kahana mishmei de Ula. Rav Kahana says in the name of Ula, HaMekadesh al tanai ubal. Again, somebody's Mekadesh based on a condition and has an act of relations. Tzricha himenu get. She does require a get, meaning to say it is considered to be a good marriage. Zehoya ma'isa. There was an incident like this. V'lohoya koach bechachamim v'lohotzia below get. And the chachamim were not able to get her out of the marriage without a get. And the Gemara continues, La'afuke mehai tana, it's to exclude the following tana. The Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Mishum Rabbi Yishmael. Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says in the name of Rabbi Yishmael, it says, V'hi lo nispasa asura. It says, let's say you have a situation, we're talking about a situation of adultery and she wasn't raped, so then she's forbidden. Hanispasa mutaris. So we understand from the pasuk that let's say it was forced upon her, then she's still mutaris, she's still permitted to her husband. And then it says in the Brais of V'yesh loch acheres, there's another case as well. Sha'afal pisha lo nispasa mutaris. Even though it was lo nispasa, she's still going to be mutaris. Ve'ezuzu, in what case of a situation where it would seem to be adultery, how could she be mutaris? She'kidusheh kidushei tos. Let's say you have a situation where the kiddushin situation in the first place was a mistake, so it's not really adultery. Sha'afilu benam murkav al kasefa, even if her son is riding on her shoulder. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Dalid Amud Beis.